Hey everyone, Reaper here again with another video. In this video I want to talk about why I slab comics, or why I want to get books slab. Now I've covered this a couple of times on my channel, but I figured I would make a more complete discussion on why I like to get books slabbed, or why I like to buy slab books, and so forth and so on. So, excuse me, I'm have bad allergies today. You know, one minute it's kind of cold, next minute it's really, really warm, and all the pollen in the air is killing me. But anyway, I digress. So, there are really three reasons that I could think of why I decide to, why I would decide to slab a book, or why I prefer to have slab books. For the third reason, for me, I'll go from 3 to 1. For number 3 is trade. Now, I don't do a whole lot of trading, especially with people I don't know. I mean, if I know you, and maybe I have a book that you want, and you have a book that I want, I'd be willing to do a trade if I know you. But if I don't know the person, I'm not really willing to do a trade. Most of the time when it comes to a trade, I might do something with that, something like that with a dealer at a show or at a local comic book store, stuff like that. So reason 3 is trade. I think it works well for a number of reasons when you're when you're trading a slab book. I think the first reason is it's because it's graded, and there's no debate on the grade. I mean, yes, you should always look at the book before you look at the number and all that stuff. I know that argument is out there, and I agree with that argument too. But for the most part, when you're working with a dealer or a shop owner or even a collector, a lot of times, they want to see the condition of the book. I could say that this book here is a 9.0. Raw book, right? Well, you could say, well, no, I don't think it's a 9.0. I think it's an 8.0. When you have the slab book, there's no debate. Now, I'm not going to get into CGC or CBCS or PGX or whatever. I'm just going to use the word slab, okay? That whole CBCS, CGC is a topic for another video. So anyway, that's for the third reason why I would want to have a slab book, because I think sometimes they make good trade bait to get something that you really want. Now, let me show you this book here. I've showed this before many times. Albedo 2. It's a 9.0. It's a high-grade copy. I mean, there are higher grades on the census, right? But there are not too many of these books out there. This is a book that, although I really like, I wouldn't mind trading this book in the future for something that I really, really want. So, when you have a book like this, it's good to have it graded, because it's a rare book, and people would be interested in seeing that this rare book is not restored, okay? I'll get into that in a little bit. But they want to see that number. Say, hey, okay, I realize there are only 2,000 copies of this, and it's already protected, in the case. It's got the grade up there. It looks good and all that stuff. It makes a good book to trade. Plus, it's a desirable book by a lot of people because of its rarity, because of the character, and so forth and so on. So that's a good example of a book that I would trade for something bigger. Something of equal trade value. When it comes to trade, if I were to trade that book, I would want something big, not a bunch of different things, just one big book in particular. But, I would have the option to do that with someone who was willing to do that, because I think that having it slab makes it easier, for that scenario to come to pass. And like I was mentioning before, when you're trading to a collector, you're trading to a seller, it's not just the grade they want to see. They want to make sure that there's no restoration, right? I mean, sometimes people are hesitant, and they rightfully should be, when it comes to restoration. Some restoration is pretty easy to pick up. I am certainly no expert at it, but, I try to keep my eyes open. But sometimes other forms of restoration are harder to detect. Well, when you have a slab, in theory, you know whether it's restored or not, because the slabbing company states it on the slab, whether it's restored or not. So I think that alleviates a lot of worry. This is going to trickle, all this what I'm talking about right now is going to trickle into my number one reason coming up in a few minutes. I'll bring some of this stuff up again. But I think that all of these things, when it comes to slabbing and trading, it makes something like that, a transaction like that, if you will, go a lot easier. Excuse me if I'm sniffing. Number two, out of the three reasons why I prefer slabs or I like to get things slabbed, is because of protection. Protection for the book. Now, I alluded a little bit to that when I was talking about this. We have a rare book. There's only 2,000 of them. You know, when you have them in the slab, I mean, granted, people have had their books in bags for decades and things, things were okay. But, when it comes to a rare book or a high value book or whatever it may be, I prefer to have it encased. I prefer to have it where, no other damage could come to it. I think that a lot of people feel the same way when it comes to slabbing books. If let's say, for example, other than the expensive books, let's say, even other expensive books too. Let's say you have some low-grade books, right? You have some really low-grade golden age books that are high value, or even silver age books, and some of them may be weak around the staples or whatever it is. And they may make good candidates to slab. You might get a 3.0 or 3.5, 4.0 low-grade stuff, but if that's something you're okay with or that's something you accept, you can have it slabbed and you can have it protected. I think that's another reason, a good reason to get books slabbed, and it's another reason why I would get books slabbed. I have a couple of books that I think are, between the 3 and the 4 range that are still top dollar books, even in that low grade range, that are raw, that I would like to have slabbed because, hey, I don't need to flip through them. I'm certainly not going to be flipping through them if they have weak spines or they're weak around the staples or whatever the defect is. I'm not going to periodically pull them out and just start flipping through them. It's not a bad idea to have them protected if they're good candidates for that. So that's my number 2 reason. My number 1 reason is selling. I think that would be number 1, I think, on a lot of people's lists, whether it's a collector that wants to call a collection, whether it's a flipper that, hey, I think, I don't know, I don't flip on a regular basis. I would think that sometimes slabs might sell a little bit easier than raw books. I could be wrong on that, because like I said, I don't do that regularly. I do sell every now and then. I've noticed that my slab books, whenever I sell a slab, and I don't sell often a slab book, they sell pretty quickly because of the reasons I mentioned in my earlier. People can see the number and no restoration and all that stuff. So I said before, that stuff trickles down to this number 1 reason. But I think that aside, I think that's obvious. One of the main reasons why, and I talked about this with Tony Toth, one of the main reasons why when it comes to selling books, I would prefer to have them slabbed, or at least the majority of my high dollar books. I certainly would not go out and get any book slabbed. This is not a video saying you should do that, because there are some books it's just a waste to get slabbed. I mean, I think personally. But we're talking about top dollar books, high value books, and so forth. But the main reason why I think it would be a good idea to get these books slabbed, at least for me, is because what happens if something happened to me, or what happened to you? Who in your family, and let's say someone in your family has no interest in your books, or has no idea what to do with them, has no idea what they are or what they're worth, and you have some high value books in your collection, what happens? I mean, maybe you have an escape plan, how to handle something like that. That's great. We should all have a plan when it comes to stuff like that. But what if a freak accident happened and your loved ones were left with all these books? Is it something that they're going to care for? Is it something that they know they're getting and they plan on keeping? Then it may be a different answer to this question. But what if they're like, well, what do I do with this? Well, how do I handle this? How do I get rid of these? I don't want them. My son doesn't want them. My daughter doesn't want them. My wife doesn't want them. What's going to happen to them? It's always good to have them slabbed, because then you have that number on there, and then they could proceed accordingly. And I say slabbed, and because of this, there are always vultures out there that will try to take advantage of people that are suffering from a loss. Like, they have this collection. They're distraught. They don't know what to do with it. They just want to get rid of it. And that's when people swoop in and they get some of those high-dollar books for practically nothing. You get them slabbed. You know what they are. Have your loved ones educated on one. If they don't want them, here are the numbers. This albedo number 2 is a 9.0. Tell them where they can go to sell these books, whether it's Comic Link or whatever. Go through those appropriate steps to get the most amount for your books, so that people don't come in and try to take advantage of you. I mean, they could take advantage of you even if they're slabbed, if you still don't know what to do, if you don't cover all the steps. But I think having books slabbed sometimes minimizes that to some extent, although it still can happen. But I think once you have that number on that book, and that book is in the case, there's no debate on what that grade is and what a person can get range-wise. And I think that's the number one reason, selling. I'm like I said, I'm not too worried about what happens, because my wife knows what to do, and so forth. But sometimes there are people out there that have no family. What's going to become of the books? Or they have only one person that they're going to leave stuff to, and that person may not know too much about comics. It's something to think about. What's going to happen to these? How can we get rid of these things in a very easy way, without having to go through each of them and grading them and figuring out what it is? Have them already graded. Have them already slabbed. So there cuts a lot of that junk out. So those are my 3 reasons why I like to have slab books, and why I probably would like to get some other books slabbed. A couple other things before I go. Thank you all to all my subscribers. I have reached over 2,000 subscribers. It seems just like yesterday. All of you helped me get to 1,000, which I greatly appreciate all of you for. And I greatly appreciate all of you again for making me go over 2,000. So thank you very much. And for all of us that are in the States, happy 4th of July. Take care, everyone.